Good evening, St Columba. This evening your bedtime story is going to be Mog's Bad Thing by Judith Kerr. One day, Mog was coming home to her garden. She'd been on a mouse hunt all night and she was very tired. Mog thought, I need a big sleep. But first she went round her garden to see if it was just as she'd left it. The grass was still there, the flowers were still there, the tree was still there, and so was her lavatory behind the tree. Mog thought, that's all right then. It was starting to rain, so she went into the house. Mr Bunce from the pet shop was there with Mr Thompson. He said, "Hello, Mog. Are you ready for the cat show tomorrow?" Debbie said, "There's going to be a cat show in our garden. Mog, and you can be in it." "What if it rains?" said Nicky. "All the cats will get wet." "No," said Mr Bunce, "because I'm going to put up a big tent and the cat show will be inside it." Debbie said, "Perhaps Mog will win a prize." Mr Thompson looked at Mog and Mog looked back at him. He said, well, you never know." Mog had had her breakfast and went to have her big sleep. It was a very big sleep. It was so big she only woke up after everyone else had gone to bed. Mog thought, now for another mouse hunt. But when she looked out, she had a terrible shock. The garden had disappeared. The grass had disappeared. The flowers had disappeared. The tree had disappeared. And, worst of all, her lavatory behind the tree had disappeared. Instead, there was the dark, big, white, flippy, flappy, floppy thing. The flappy, floppy thing moved in the wind. It went flap, flap, flap. It went flap, 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 with a loud flappy noise. Mog thought, I'd better run. Then she thought, but I want my lavatory. Suddenly, the flappy floppy thing flapped right at her. It nearly caught her nose. Mog ran. She ran back into her house. She ran through all the rooms in case the flappy floppy thing was coming after her. She thought, what shall I do? What shall I do? And then Mog did a bad thing. She did not mean to do it, but she just did it. She did it in Mr Thompson's chair. Then she hid under the sofa where the flappy floppy thing couldn't get her. She was too upset to think any more, so she just went back to sleep. She woke up in the morning to a great noise. It was a shouting noise, and Mr Thompson was doing the shouting. He shouted, "Look, what has that horrible cat done in my chair?" "Where is that horrible cat? Just wait till I find her." Mog did not want Mr Thompson to find her. When no one was looking, she ran out from under the sofa, out of the room, and to the very top of the house. She thought, no one will ever find me here. I'll stay here forever and ever, and I'll never go downstairs again. She was so very sad. But downstairs, they were all too busy to think about Mog. Mr Bunce had come to get ready for the cat show. He fixed a hole in the tent where the rain had come through. Then he put out a table for the cats to sit on, and then chairs for the cats' people. Debbie said, it's time to get Mog ready too. Where is she? No one had seen her. They all shouted, Mog, where are you? Mog! Mr Thompson said, oh dear, here come the first cats for our cat show. But there was no Mog. They looked in every place they could think of. but there was still no Mog. Debbie said, "But we can't start the cat show without Mog." "Don't worry," said Mr Bunce. "I expect she'll suddenly appear and surprise us all." There was no time to go on looking for Mog because more cats were arriving. There was a Siamese from round the corner, and Blackie from the High Street, and Ginger from the paper shop, and old Mr Ben's Tommy, and Fluffy, who'd once bitten Mog's ear, and Oscar, who ate 3 tins of cat food every day, and a whole lot of others. They all went into the big tent. The cats looked at the others, and the cat's people looked at each other and at each other's cats. There was a prize for the most unusual cat in the show, and everyone wondered which one would win. A lot of people thought Fluffy was unusual. "He's only unusual as an ear biter," said Nicky. Mr Bunce went round making noises. He could not make notes about Mog because she was not there. "Wherever could she be?" said Debbie. Mog was getting bored with her hiding place. She thought she'd look out of the window. The flappy floppy thing had stopped flapping. It didn't look so bad in daylight. And there was her tree. It was there. It was still there. Mog thought, "I could jump down on that flappy floppy thing and into my garden." Then she thought, "But it might flap at me." Then she thought, "Shall I?" Inside the tent, Mr Bunce had finished making notes, and he said, "It's time to choose the winner of the show. We can choose Bertie, who has unusual eyes, or Oscar, who is unusually big, or Fluffy, who is unusually furry, or Min, who is unusually, well, unfurry, or Mrs Pussy, who has a very unusual number of kittens." But something was wrong. Fluffy was getting wet. It was raining on Fluffy. The rain was getting inside the tent. "Oh dear," said Mr Bunce. "It's another hole in the tent. The rain will come through." But then something more than rain came through. It was something furry. It was something stripy. Nicky shouted, "It's Mog!" "Well, I never," said Mr Bunce, "and in a little dress. I thought Mog might surprise us a bit, but this beats everything." Mog tried to say something, but only a very small noise came out. Meow. Then Mr Bunce said, "In this show we have seen some unusual cats, but none as unusual as Mog. She has flown through the air like a circus cat. She is an acrobat, and she amazed us all, and I think the prizes for the most unusual cat should go to Mog." Everyone clapped and cheered. Well, almost everyone. Mog got a very special prize, and Mr and Mrs Thompson got a certificate. They were very proud. Mr Thomas was so proud that he was no longer cross about his chair. When everyone had gone home, Mr Bunce took his tent away again, and Mog's garden reappeared. It was all there was, just as before. The grass was there, the flowers were there, the trees were still there, and so was the lavatory behind the tree. She was very, very happy. Good night, St Columba. Sleep well.